The feeling arrives before the proof, a quiet tightening in the chest, a sense that your choices are no longer fully yours. You can't point to a single moment where control was taken, only to the slow realization that you're adjusting yourself in ways you never consciously agreed to. That's how it begins, not with commands. With atmosphere, with a shift so subtle it feels like intuition rather than influence. And by the time you question it, the system is already running. Every relationship is a psychological environment, and environments shape behavior long before intention gets involved. Most men believe control looks loud, obvious, aggressive. They miss the truth because real influence doesn't announce itself, it whispers. It works best when it feels like your own idea. The most powerful form of control is the kind that never has to say, "Do this." It just rearranges the emotional consequences until you move where it wants you to move. Control is not force, control is incentive. Picture a man who prides himself on emotional awareness. He listens, he adapts, he wants harmony. Early on, this feels like strength. The relationship is smooth. Conversations are easy, affection flows. Then one day, without warning, the temperature drops. Messages shorten, energy fades. Nothing is wrong, yet everything feels off. His mind starts scanning for errors, like a system running diagnostics. This isn't punishment, it's a test. And the test isn't about love, it's about regulation. Withdrawal works because the male nervous system is wired to restore connection when it senses distance. When warmth disappears without explanation, the brain fills the silence with self-blame. He leans in, he compensates. He softens boundaries he didn't know he had. The lesson installs quietly. Proximity is earned through adjustment. What disappears teaches faster than what argues. The danger isn't that she planned this. The danger is that biology rewards it. Emotional distance creates scarcity, and scarcity amplifies value. When attention returns, relief floods the system. Dopamine spikes. The body remembers the contrast, not the cause. He doesn't think, "I was manipulated." He thinks, "Good, we're okay again." And just like that, calm becomes conditional. Then there's the early mirror, the phase where everything aligns too perfectly. Same humor, same values, same future. It feels cosmic, fated, rare. What's actually happening is unconscious calibration. Human beings bond by similarity, and during attachment formation, adaptation accelerates. She becomes what secures connection, not deceptively, instinctively. Intensity is not truth. It's chemistry doing its job. Months later, the mirror fades. Interests diverge. Friction appears. The man doesn't register this as natural differentiation. He registers it as loss. Something precious has slipped away, and he starts working to get it back. This is the trap. He is now negotiating with a memory, not a person. And memories can't compromise. Guilt enters next, not as accusation, but as atmosphere. She's disappointed, hurt, overwhelmed. He wasn't told what he did wrong, but he feels responsible anyway. His values do the rest. He fixes, he adjusts, he takes ownership of emotions that were never his to regulate. Each time he does, the boundary between empathy and obligation erodes. Guilt is most powerful when it never asks directly. What makes this system so effective is that it recruits the man's best traits against him. His loyalty, his protectiveness, his desire to be good. None of this feels like control. It feels like love. That's why it works. By the time he notices the imbalance, his behavior has already changed. His nervous system has already learned the rules. This chapter isn't about blame, it's about mechanics, about understanding how influence operates below awareness, and why good intentions are not protection against psychological pressure. Because what you don't see, you can't resist. And what you can't resist, you eventually normalize. The cliff edge is approaching, even if you can't see it yet. Because once a man starts regulating himself to avoid emotional consequences he doesn't understand, the relationship stops being a partnership and becomes a feedback loop. And in the next chapter, that loop tightens. The first time a man realizes something is wrong, it isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the subtle feeling of walking on eggshells without knowing who scattered them. He notices that his mood now rises and falls based on someone else's emotional weather. When she's warm, the world feels ordered. When she pulls away, everything inside him scrambles for meaning. His mind begins treating her attention like oxygen, not because he is weak, but because uncertainty is one of the most powerful psychological stresses the human brain can experience. Ambiguity activates threat systems. Silence feels like danger. And without realizing it, he starts adjusting himself to stabilize the connection, unaware that the adjustment itself is the test. Withdrawal doesn't arrive as cruelty. It arrives as distance without explanation. Short answers, less eye contact. Delayed replies. The man doesn't experience this as manipulation. He experiences it as loss. His brain, wired to protect bonds, goes into repair mode. He replays conversations, searches for mistakes, rewrites recent memories. This is not romance. This is attachment anxiety activating survival circuitry. The moment he starts chasing clarity instead of standing in certainty, the balance shifts. The rule is simple. Whoever needs the relationship more loses psychological leverage. And the tragedy is that the man often doesn't need the relationship more. He just hasn't learned how to tolerate emotional ambiguity without self-abandonment. Then there is the phase he remembers as magic. The early days, shared tastes, shared humor, shared dreams. It feels impossible that two people could align so perfectly by chance. He calls it fate. Psychology calls it mirroring, not deception, adaptation. Humans bond by reflecting. But when reflection becomes over-identification, it creates an illusion of sameness that can't survive time. When the mirror fades and differences surface, the man doesn't see natural individuation. He sees loss. He assumes he did something wrong. He tries to restore the early version of her by becoming a better version of himself, not realizing that the phase he's chasing was temporary by design. As differences emerge, guilt quietly enters the room, not shouted, implied. A sigh, a look, a nothing, I'm fine, that clearly means something is wrong. The man steps into the gap he always does. He was taught to protect, to fix, to take responsibility. Her sadness becomes his problem to solve. This is where responsibility transfer occurs. He begins regulating her emotions instead of his own. The more he adjusts his behavior to prevent her discomfort, the more he trains himself to distrust his instincts. Guilt is most powerful when it never names itself. It turns love into a performance and care into compliance. Hot and cold cycles deepen the hook. Warmth returns just long enough to restore hope. Affection spikes. Validation floods back in. His nervous system relaxes. Then the temperature drops again. Distance. Detachment. The brain doesn't experience this as inconsistency. It experiences it as intermittent reward, the same schedule that creates the strongest behavioral conditioning known to psychology. Unpredictable rewards outperform consistent ones. He becomes focused, vigilant, invested, not because he wants power, but because his nervous system is chasing relief. What feels like passion is often just nervous system activation. The man believes he is choosing his actions freely. He thinks the gifts, the compromises, the extra effort are expressions of love. But suggestion works best when it feels like your own idea, a story about another couple, a casual comment, a longing expressed without request. His brain fills in the gap. He acts, she benefits. No demand was made, so no resistance is triggered. Influence hides inside implication. Control is most effective when it feels voluntary. And the man, proud of his initiative, doesn't see how subtly his behavior is being shaped. Love bombing leaves the deepest imprint. Intensity compresses time. Emotional closeness accelerates before trust has structure. Words arrive before evidence, promises before patterns. His brain associates closeness with intensity instead of consistency. When the intensity naturally fades, he doesn't see normalization. He sees loss of value. He works to regain what was never meant to last forever. The early version becomes a benchmark that no real relationship can sustain. The memory of intensity can imprison the present. Technology magnifies everything. Silence now has timestamps. Distance has read receipts, validation has metrics. Social platforms allow emotional signals to be broadcast without conversation. A story posted, a photo liked, a comment left unanswered. The man reads meaning into fragments, his attention splinters, his focus narrows. Digital ambiguity becomes a constant low-grade stressor. The mind was never designed to process relational cues without context. And yet here he is, trying to decode intimacy through screens. At some point, something inside him stiffens. Not anger, awareness. He notices the pattern, the chase, the guilt, the self-editing. He realizes his emotional state has been outsourced. This is the moment of choice. He can confront her, hoping awareness will change unconscious behavior. Or he can change himself, strengthening boundaries that don't require explanation. Biology doesn't respond to arguments. It responds to environment. When withdrawal no longer produces pursuit, the tactic loses value. When guilt no longer produces compliance, it fades. What doesn't work stops being used. The transformation isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming anchored. He learns to tolerate silence without filling it, to allow disappointment without self-blame, to care without collapsing. His sense of self stops hinging on approval, not because he values connection less, but because he values himself more. And here's the paradox that changes everything. When manipulation stops working, something else becomes possible. Either the dynamic escalates into control, revealing incompatibility, or it stabilizes into mutual respect. The story doesn't end here, but now the man is no longer being moved unconsciously. In the next chapter, we'll confront what happens when psychological immunity forces the relationship to reveal its true shape. The shift is subtle but irreversible. Once a man stops reacting automatically, the entire emotional architecture of the relationship begins to tremble. The same behaviors that once controlled him now land differently. Silence no longer triggers panic. Distance no longer demands pursuit. He notices something strange happening inside himself, space. Not emotional withdrawal, but internal stability. For the first time, he is responding instead of reacting. And biology notices power doesn't announce itself. It becomes visible when pressure no longer moves you. This is where many relationships reach their moment of truth. When withdrawal no longer creates anxiety, it loses its function. When guilt no longer produces compliance, it stops being useful. Unconscious tactics depend on predictable responses. Remove the response, and the behavior collapses. Some women escalate here. The tactics become louder, more dramatic, more obvious. Tears sharpen, accusations appear. Emotional storms intensify. This escalation isn't cruelty, it's panic. A system that has always worked is failing, and biology doesn't like losing leverage. Escalation is what happens when subtle control stops working. Other women respond very differently. They soften, they become curious. They communicate directly for the first time. They express needs instead of implying them. This is the rare but powerful transition from unconscious strategy to conscious connection. These women don't lose attraction when a man becomes immune to manipulation. They gain respect because respect is rooted in stability, not compliance. Only a grounded man can invite a grounded relationship. The man, meanwhile, experiences a quiet grief. He realizes how much of himself he bent to preserve harmony. How often he confused love with self-erasure. This isn't resentment, it's clarity. He no longer needs to villainize her to reclaim himself. He understands that unconscious patterns aren't moral failures, they're default settings. And default settings can only be changed by new environments, not arguments. Understanding replaces blame when strength replaces need. This is where boundaries finally make sense. Not as ultimatums, not as threats, but as self-respect made visible. He doesn't explain them repeatedly, he lives them. If behavior violates his values, he doesn't negotiate his discomfort away. He adjusts his proximity. Boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. They allow what aligns and exclude what doesn't. You don't enforce boundaries with words. You enforce them with consistency. Something remarkable happens when a man becomes internally validated. He stops scanning for approval. His nervous system stabilizes. His decisions slow down. He listens more carefully because he isn't rushing to preserve attachment. Ironically, this makes him more attractive. Not because he's playing a strategy, but because his presence is no longer desperate. Calm is magnetic when it isn't performative. At this stage, the relationship can no longer survive on emotional games. It must evolve or dissolve. There is no middle ground. Dynamics based on control cannot coexist with psychological sovereignty. If she requires leverage to feel secure, the connection fractures. If she can meet him in mutual responsibility, something real begins. This is the moment where compatibility is revealed, not imagined. Real connection begins where manipulation becomes unnecessary. For the man, the victory isn't keeping the relationship, it's keeping himself. He no longer fears being alone because solitude no longer feels like rejection. He has built a life dense with meaning, purpose, and self-trust. Relationship becomes a choice, not a lifeline. And when love is chosen freely, it shows up differently. Calmer, slower, deeper need distorts love. Choice refines it. This understanding reframes everything that came before. The tactics weren't proof that women are malicious. They were proof that psychology tests strength automatically. The man who collapses under emotional pressure reveals his vulnerability. The man who remains grounded reveals his readiness. This was never about control. It was about assessment. Pressure doesn't change character. It reveals it. The final lesson is this. You don't become immune to manipulation by becoming harder. You become immune by becoming whole. When nothing external is required to stabilize your sense of self, influence loses its grip. And from that place, you can finally ask the only question that matters. Does this relationship make me more myself or less? The answer will be unmistakable, and when it is, choose accordingly. If this resonated, reflect on your own patterns. Share this with someone who needs clarity. And remember, the strongest position in any relationship is the one where you can walk away without losing yourself.